And man, was that just a punch to the gut, but also a wake up of saying, I'm not as good as I think about, we all do this where we think we can be half in and working and having a conversation. We can't. We're not that good.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Joel Irway here, and welcome to another very special episode of Experts Unleashed. You are in for an amazing treat today. I am over the moon excited to have our guest on here today because we are talking about a completely new topic that we have never covered on the podcast here today. I'm excited for a bunch of reasons. Number one, fresh new content. We've never covered the angle. And number two, I'm speaking to a fellow resident in the St. Augustine Beach area. And so I've got Jim Sheils on, who is the author of The Family Board Meeting. I was exposed to Jim's book probably 2 or 3 years ago. And it was, I don't even remember who introduced it, who gave us the book. I don't even remember why we got the book, but it was immediate. Like, we got it. I actually bought 2 copies. My wife and I said, okay, this is important. This is an important topic. We both got it. We sat in bed one night and we read it cover to cover in a span of like an hour and a half. And so I'm really excited to kind of like dive into that. I'm excited to talk to Jim, and we're going to talk about business, about life and family, and how all of that interconnects. So Jim, welcome to the show, my man.
Awesome to be here, Joel. Glad to always help out a local, and obviously we have some mutual friends, and the fact that you got something out of the book, I'm always thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, so our mutual friend is Daniel Marcos. Daniel was actually on the podcast a couple of months ago, and I was telling Daniel that hey, we have a place down in St. Augustine. He's like, oh, I love St. Augustine. In fact, I was there, I don't know, somewhat recently to an event of yours, Jim. And so that's how that whole conversation started. That's how we got introduced, and I'm excited to kind of dive into it. So let me first kind of give people a background of like how I got exposed to you. So,
Sure.
As I said, we got the book, my wife and I read it, and like, this is amazing. Like, this seems so simple. We have always had a family first focus with our business, and as entrepreneurs and as business owners, it's very easy to get sucked away from that. And so when we read that book, we're like, wow, this is a clear formula, an impactful formula, because I think the big idea was you only have 18 summers with your children, with your kids. Make the most out of it as you can. And so how we implemented it, we've done the family boardroom strategy, which is, I'll have you kind of explain it a little bit deeper, but we actually kind of like pivoted it a little bit. And more so in the summers, what we do is I take Fridays off. I've taken Fridays off for about 3 years now, and we dedicate Fridays to Family Fun Fridays. And so every Friday in the summer, we do a small trip, the 4 of us, my son, my daughter, and my wife, and we do these little mini trips all over the place, and we film them. And then we document them. I've got my video editor. She puts a collage together, or a little montage together at the end of the summer. And it's just amazing. And that all stemmed from your book. And so rather than me kind of explain your theory of, and your concept of, it's not really theory, but your concept of the family board meeting, why don't you give us a little background about how it came about, and then we can dive in.
Yeah, sure. I'm not a family psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not any of those things. I'm an entrepreneur that wanted to make sure he didn't get lost at home. I've met a lot of people through the years, Joel. They were really successful in business, and they were basically failing at home. And I never wanted to be like that. And I probably could have taken that direction, but I'll tell you, there's an interesting story. I know Daniel knows, but you probably don't even know it yet. It was back in 2011. I was sent an article about this guy named Walter Isaacson. And his claim to fame is he was the biographer for Steve Jobs. And it was a really interesting read because he was being interviewed a few days after Steve Jobs had passed away. And the article said this: Steve Jobs spent his final days surrounded by close family, and he used the opportunity for final interviews to explain to his wife and kids why he wasn't there for them. In fact, Jobs was quoted as saying, I wanted my family to know who I was. I wasn't always there for them. And I wanted to explain why and for them to understand. And I give this guy Isaacson a lot of credit. I don't know him, but he fired a question at Steve Jobs. He said, Steve, are you glad you had a family? Are you glad you had children? A powerful question, especially, you're there with quite arguably the most successful entrepreneur of all time. Steve fired right back and he said, it's 10,000 times better than anything I've ever done.
Hmm.
And that really stuck with me, Joel. And of course, at first, I didn't want to take the lesson that was being thrown at me. I was crossing up my arms and saying, oh, well, Steve Jobs, he had a reputation for being a jerk. That's not me. Right. But I thought about all the times I moved those benchmarks, those goalposts, that I was half in at home and pretending to be there and on my phone, and how many times I just had made the promise, yeah, once I get to this next one, then I'll be available. And I've been told people receive extreme clarity at the end of their life. And if there's any truth to that, Steve Jobs just left me some important clues. And, you go back, whatever, 12 years now, almost now, when this started, at that time, when I read that article, I had brought my real estate investment company back from near bankruptcy from the '08 meltdown at that time. So we were doing okay, but still licking our wounds. I was in the process of growing our family. I now have 5 children, some adopted, some biological. My wife and I were going through miscarriages at the time, which is a pretty, heavy time if any of people out there have gone through that with their own spouses. And then to top it all off, right at that time, I had just gotten the letter of approval a few days earlier to donate a kidney to my father. And that was a really big thing that we went through. And when you go through things like that all happening at once, Joel, I don't know what happened to me that time, but I really did change as a person. And my curiosity and my commitment towards family life really changed. And it was never the same. And it led me to the work that I was doing today. And what I found was this one simple principle that I talk about, the family board meeting, where, Daniel got into it, then came to our retreats, and then now you're into it. It's because it's so important about the people we love at home and sometimes get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
And the whole point and premise of the work we got into with this book and then growing this family education company was because I wanted to see entrepreneurs, me to start, because we're always our own product, right? We're a product. I needed these things. I needed these lessons. I was not where I wanted to be. I wanted to see people be successful in business and successful at home. And there was really no one offering that second side. You and I can go to incredible events of how to expand our marketing, how to tighten up our numbers, how to land better clients. These are all important things. But really, there was nothing teaching us through the entrepreneur mindset of how to be more successful, more grounded, more connected at home. And that's what I wanted to create. And the family board meeting was really a product of just stories. As you read the book, it's pretty personal. I didn't want to talk about these things. They were very uncomfortable. Probably broke down on stage the first few times I had to speak on it, more times than I want to admit. But the more that I saw it taking hold, and this went to a bestseller with about an $800 budget. I mean, we didn't put much towards it. I just shared the concept with some entrepreneur friends, and it spread like wildfire. And it wasn't because the book was greatly written. I'm not going to give myself that credit, but the subject is really important, because as you talked, this is a legacy thing that we're living right now. And I think the principles we have in these books can make a difference in the relationship you have with your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your own parents. I've seen that happen for me. The people that we truly care about, we work hard to spend this quality time with when we first went on this entrepreneurial adventure. So the book holds a few key principles. When you put them together, they're that peanut butter and jelly sandwich of family connection.
Yeah. It's so powerful, man, because I think, you get this feeling like, and I'm sure everybody has gone through this feeling. If you've got a family, if you've got kids and you're building a business, it's like your business is a baby, and your business provides your financial lifeblood. I think it's really, really easy to put your blinders on, because that's the bottom of, Maslow's hierarchy: security, stability, financial security. And so, you get the cart and the horse. And a lot of times we say we got, you got to make the money in order to build the family and keep the family secure. And so it's very easy to put them secondary to the business. And
with great intentions, right?
Yes,
I mean, the intentions are usually good. They're not bad intentions. But I'll tell you, the scary thing, Joel, especially for me, and now I've worked with thousands of entrepreneur families. And when we start to climb that entrepreneurial mountain in a way that's hard, fast, frantic, again, with those good intentions, you can suddenly look around consciously years down the road, 5-10 years down the road, and your family is either gone, or what I see happen way more often, Joel, is your family's still there. But if you really, really have to be honest, they basically view you as a stranger.
Yep.
You're like a part-time disciplinarian, you're a roommate, or you're just an ATM machine. And
Yeah.
the bad part about that is when that happens, I've seen three dominating emotions take over. And I've interviewed thousands of entrepreneurs on this, me included. That would be guilt, depression, and bitterness. And how can we be at our best, Joel, if those three emotions are dominating, personally or professionally?
You know what is, so as a marketer myself, like I look at this through the lens of like, you know, why aren't more people paying attention to this? Like, why is this not top of mind and front of mind? And it's just kind of, it's just kind of funny to think about it, because it's one of those things where if you don't get it taken care of, it's a future problem. And
Mhm.
so it's not that like, it's you have to be forward thinking and forward planning to kind of like get your priorities straight and saying, okay, if I don't take care of this now, like this is like, it's going to lead to a lot of problems down the road. And the problems are, they won't surface, they won't materialize until really, until years down the road when your kids graduate from college and they become adults. And it's like, oh, they're not calling you. And, just kind of that afterthought, you don't have that relationship. And so I think it's really, really important for people like to spread this message so it gets out in front of people and say, listen, it's going to be like, you might be at the top of the mountain, but what really matters down the road. And, do you really want your kids to, do you really want to go to your kid's wedding and just be an afterthought? Or do you want your kids to, when you're giving your speech, like, do you want them to recognize you as being like that
Exactly.
influential leader
Yep.
of like, do you want them to be crying as they're looking at you and saying, thank you, dad, or thank you, mom? Like, that's what really made the impact for me. And, that's why I love the message so much. It's one of those things that's hard to sell because there's no present pain.
No, yeah, it's you can
Yeah.
push it off. And there's also been that mindset out there, and it's starting to change, where there was a lot of old coaching out there that would say, put your head down for the next 5 years. You want to take this business to the 10x, 20x, or you got to put your head down the next 5 years. Your family will understand, you'll be able to get back to them. But then 5 turns into 10. And you go from a 6-year-old to a 16-year-old. That's a pretty big 10 years to
Oh, yeah.
miss. And it was a friend of mine, David Bach. He was actually at one of our retreats as well. Obviously a famous financial writer, but he said, Jim, this is incredible, because let me tell you, the years are not all equal. The years are not all equal. I always talk about this. It was more for about your enjoying your retirement years, what the safari adventures you might go on at 60, you might not want to do at 85. That's just, I'd like to think I'm going to be, extra longevity, but that's just the reality. And it's the same way with our children. I'm sorry, if you miss 10 years from your 6-year-old to your 16-year-old, I don't see that 16-year-old going to you for help and advice and quality time instead of their friends or the internet. And that's like every parent's nightmare once you start to get to those real pivotal years. But it's just, I think people have good intention. There's been bad coaching. And like you said, it's not immediate. It's not like this is like you have this giant cut on your arm that you got to get stitches in right away. It's like a slow burn on the inside that, you won't even notice for years. And then all of a sudden it becomes acute.
Well, explain your family board meeting concept, right? So, how do we get ahead of this now? And how do we build just such a deep relationship with our kids and getting involved with their life? Because this is not complicated, and it's not even, I don't want to say it's not a lot of work, because it always takes work to be involved with your kids, but like your structure and your system is so impactful. So explain what it is for our listeners.
Yeah. So it's a simple rhythm. I got taught this. Actually, let's go back to one of my biggest teachers was Vern Harnish and Daniel Marcos, the Rockefeller principles. What was it? Data, priority, and rhythms, right? Rhythms in business. There are some of these people built the biggest businesses. Certain business principles I don't think you can take home. Rhythms you can. Rhythm, I mean, think about rhythm. It's that beat of the drum that keeps a whole great song that you like to go, boom, 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 boom. This is a rhythm in our family life that keeps the beat, that keeps us in harmony. It's that simple rhythm. This one rhythm that I share has a couple of underlying principles. And I think what would be cool to do is just explain the 3 underlying principles, because then the people are going to really buy in. So this is a simple rhythm that I do with my children. You're going to be able to use it into other relationships, but you understand the 3 principles, you can carry it to other things. And the first principle, which well now, Joel, is something that is so overlooked, so underused, yet so potent. It's just shocking that in all the different therapies and experts out there, no one talks about it, but it's the one-to-one principle. And if you hear nothing else I say today, I'm cool with that. But hang up right after this point. Not don't do that to Joel. You can do it to me, but don't do it to Joel. But it is this: you got to separate the parts to strengthen the whole. You got to separate the parts to strengthen the whole. Get one-on-one with your children. It was one-on-one time that helped convince my dad to take the kidney from me. It was one-on-one time that helped me be able to help my oldest son overcome night terrors and a misdiagnosis of autism. It was one-on-one time that with my wife. So like I said, this can carry to other things. That the one-on-one time we consistently put on the calendar every week is what continues us to be dating and deepen our relationship. I've come from an Irish Catholic family, Joel. So that means I have like 4,000 cousins, right? That's great. And these big things are great, these big celebrations, but it's really the magnifying glass of the one-on-one time that pulls your child out, that can lower the guard, that you can start to have those conversations you never thought you were going to have. And it takes away all the distractions, sibling rivalry, no best friend, no spouse. It's just you and them. And if you separate the parts, you can strengthen the whole. So the one-to-one principle is the absolute starting point. If you really care about your family, you want to have stronger bonds, stronger connections. All the people that I know that are achieving that use the one-to-one principle. They're making sure they schedule one-on-one time with the people they love. And they do it. And they do it like a real calendar. That which we schedule gets done. You schedule that one-on-one time. So that's the first principle. And that carries over to time with my children, which the book is about, but also time with my wife, time with my parents, times with some of the most important people in my business or that. But the one-to-one principle, potent as anything. You put it to work. I'm sure, did you see it with your children? It was a different dynamic.
It is different, so we do family fun Fridays in the summer, and we did 2 or 3 family board meetings, and we haven't, full transparency, we've lost track of the rhythm, right?
That's
it always gets, not always, but it's very easy to get pushed under the rug, right? And just miss those quarterly meetings. But we did a couple of them, and it is different. I did a hike with my son, one-on-one. He was 5 years old. We go down to the gorge, like the Niagara River that's connected to Niagara Falls. The gorges are beautiful. Went for a hike down the gorge, and we're sitting there and we're on this giant rock, and just the connection that we had. He's like, Dad, I want to climb this big rock. Like, okay, cool. Let's climb the big rock. Like, it's whatever he wants to do. It's whatever the child wants to do. It's like there's no agenda. It's like, Dominic, lead the way. And so then you just start conversations, and you just start, you build a deeper connection, and there's no two ways around it. It's just you and him.
Yeah. And I can imagine on that rock, one of the reasons why that you said Dominic, you and Dominic were having so much fun is, again, you were also missing another distraction, which is principle number 2. And it's something that we coined a few years ago. I'm really proud of, and it's intermittent tech fasting.
Yeah.
Intermittent tech fasting. Now we all know, about intermittent fasting. If you've read about it, for the health benefits, it's great for organ regenerating, muscle redevelopment, weight maintenance. You're not giving up eating, Joel, right? But you're deliberately eating between this time and this time. And those are the benefits that come. I believe we have to look at technology the same way. I don't want to move to a survival ranch in Montana. I love Montana, but I don't want to give up all my electronics. I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now. But you have to have periods of complete and total unavailability for the people most important in your life. So when I have these days, or you were with Dominic on the rock, the phone is on either off or on airplane mode, because I might snap a few pictures. Like you said, you like to commemorate the events. And I think that's important, man. When I'm looking back now, remember, I started doing these when my oldest son was 17. He's 19 now. It's like, it is a yearbooking of our relationship. So you snap a few of these pictures. That's great. But no one's emailing me. No one's calling me. Even when I've done this now, to our full teen sons right now, their phone's not invited, because what I've found is we are interrupted so much, Joel. We're just interrupted all the time by that text, by that email, by that useless Facebook thread that we don't even need to pay attention to. And it really is a disrespect, and it's an unconscious statement that this, whatever is on it, whatever we're taking, is more important than you. We don't want to admit that, but that's really the unconscious message that we're sending. And no, every parent says to me, well, I want them to be able to lean on me. I want to be able to support them better. I want them to open up to me. If you're always doing this, how terrible is that? And another thing too of emotion with intermittent tech fasting. There's a story I tell. It's a couple of years ago when I come home from work now for at least an hour, normally 2 now. My phone's off. There's no electronics. 5:30 to 7:30. We call it the dinner time challenge. My phone's off. I want that break. But one day, Joel, again, like you said, hey, I fell out of rhythm. That's okay. Get back into rhythm. I fall out of rhythm and I teach these rhythms. I mean, this happens. Get out of the car. Instead of leaving my phone in the car or in my computer bag, what do? I leave it in my pocket. And there's my 5-year-old Maggie. And she says, Daddy, let's get on the trampoline. So we get on the trampoline. We love trampolining at our house. It's a lot easier nowadays because if you grew up like me in the 80s, we didn't have these nets on the side. You're getting ricocheted off at 120 miles an hour. And
we've got one of those. Yeah.
So,
it's incredibly dangerous. Yeah. Incredibly dangerous.
And so the dangers of parenting and kiddom. But so we get on the trampoline, Joel, and that dreaded noise. Zzz, 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 and I'm like, ah. So I broke my own rule. Right now, I don't even have to look at it, right? But my head goes in the 6 different directions. What is this? How do I solve? What am I going to fix? Pull it out. And there's a real estate closing that I was doing for our business. And someone dropped the ball on some simple, easy little thing. So what happens there? So I'm starting to swear under my breath. I'm in my head. The last place I am, Joel, is right there on the trampoline. And something happened that just cut me like a knife right there. Is I just all of a sudden looked down at Maggie, and I've probably been on there longer than I think, on the trampoline. And she goes, Daddy, why are you so mad at me? And I'm like,
oh, geez.
Oh my gosh. And here's the problem. We get pulled into work things and we believe we have this ability to multitask. We believe we have this ability to split emotions and be emotional on the inside, not showing it or expressing it to the other things in front of us. And there I was sending this message to my daughter. She didn't understand what a real estate closing, what was happening. She just saw me, this, and I'm on there with her. So she took that on. And man, was that just a punch to the gut, but also a wake up of saying, I'm not as good as I think about, we all do this where we think we can be half in and working and having a conversation. We can't, we're not that good. So when I have these one-on-one days, a half day every quarter with my kids, when I go on date night every week with my wife, every Wednesday, 5:30 to 8:30, boom, 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 same rhythm every week. My phone is not invited anymore, Joel. It is the fastest way to kill the potency of these strategies that I'm talking about, because it gets in the way. Something else is more important, and you're not truly there. You're not able to talk if you're also working on business problems or mundane other detail issues with your spouse or a friend or that, and you're not fully there with them.
Something happens when you have that one-on-one dynamic, and it's even when it happens, like for example, like when we do our group family trips, like there's 4 of us, your attention is split between 3 other people, right? And so when you have that one-on-one time, like it is a completely different focus that you have with that one person, like that relationship that you can, and that moment, however long it is, could be an hour, could be 4 hours, whatever, a full day. When you cut everything else off and you truly isolate your attention, I found this personally, so I'm speaking just from experience. When I'm able to give my son or my daughter one-on-one attention with absolutely nothing else, not even any other family members, it's like there's nothing like it. That bond, You can feel it. You can feel the bond get tighter because you're having different conversations. You're forced to be looking at each other. You're forced to be having deeper conversations, and that's what happens when you build deeper relationships. And so it's amazing. So the first 2, let me just kind of reiterate to help bring this back full circle. So the first step is one-on-one time, right?
Yes, sir.
And the second step is repeat what the second step.
It's without electronics. I call it intermittent tech fasting now. So you're not giving up your electronics, and your teens aren't forever, but there's going to be times where you're completely and totally unavailable.
Yeah.
So when I set these days with my kids, scheduled one-on-one, my phone's not coming, with the exception of maybe airplane mode to snap a few photos. And then the third principle of that is just a fun activity with focused reflection. And so this is basically the shortest definition in the world for experiential education. Now, experiential education, I'm kind of an alternative education nut. I'm always looking for new ways to learn for me, for my children, because I want effectiveness. And I'm not going to talk down traditional school, but I think a lot of it's ineffective. And one of the reasons why it's non-experiential. Experiential education is by far shows to have the most retention, the most depth, the most just overall effectiveness. And so that's basically what you're doing here. So, with Dominic, with any of my kids, they get to plan the day. I'm going all in. As entrepreneurs, a lot of you out there listening, we're problem solvers and we're pushy. So we're like, oh, well, hey, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up this day, which is great. Hey, look, you get one-on-one, you turn off your phone, you set a day. More power to you. High fives. But it gets even better if you give them ownership. Let their creativity shine. Let them pick the day. Otherwise, I might say, I'm here in St. Augustine, I'm going to go to a Jaguars game with my son. And yeah, we did that. That's great. But hey, what if my son doesn't like football? What if he's like, yeah, it's all right, but I didn't want to go. Let them design the day. Like my oldest son now, 19 years old, we still do these. He, for several years, guess what he wanted to do, Joel? He wanted to go fishing. So we went fishing in different spots. What is he now? Well, he just graduated high school and got his boat captain's license at the same time. He started his own charter fishing business. So you want to talk about how these things can actually work to incredible heights. That's a big one. But let them plan the day. I've had princess parties that I probably wouldn't want to post on the internet with my daughter. I've gone to the alligator farm, and you'll appreciate this, with Sammy, the last 4 out of 5 board meetings. He's in alligator zone. So I've been there twice. I've been there twice in probably the last 6 months. So it's, but that's what he wants to do. He picks the day. I go all in every time too, Joel. I'm like, buddy, if that's what you want to do, we're going back to the alligator farm. And he's going to move on to something, but I let them pick the day. I let them go all in. They plan it. People go, I want to know what my kids' passion and interests are. Let them plan a day. You're going to start to see things uncover. And they're going to actually buy in more. So I let them pick the day. We go all in. We usually have a meal, and focused reflection is just spending time at the end of this, event, this day, having some conversation. Hey, what was your favorite part of the day and why? You start with that. That's the opening question of experiential education. What was your favorite part of the day? Why? And you'll see what opens up. And the conversation sometimes here might last 2 minutes. It might go an hour and a half. And I've had them go both ways. But this is the most important time. This is like crossing the goal line right here for me, because it's at these moments, Joel, of this focused reflection. They've shared things with me, and it's given me the opportunity to do 2 things. And this is really important for our parents out there. It's given me the opportunity to give a sincere apology or a genuine compliment, because I'm usually running behind on both of those, because I'm going so fast. I'm doing my businesses. We all think I've told my son that, or I've told my wife that. We don't. If I had to, of all the groups, entrepreneur groups I've taught with and learned and gotten feedback on this, we think we've given more apologies or more genuine compliments than we actually have. And for my son hey, you know what? I've been really a little bit on high tension and unavailable recently because I'm working on something. I just want to say, I'm sorry. I really like spending time with you. This means a lot, or it might be with one of the elders. We have a range, Joel, of 6 months to 19 in our house, 5 kids, right? We just adopted a girl at birth 6 months ago. She's 6 months as of last week. That's a big range. And there has to be some patience there. So with one of my teen sons, I'm like, I've watched you go all in with your new adopted sister. You know how supportive that is to my wife? Thank you. Like, I just want to make sure I'm saying that. And you can see just the pride and the appreciation where I'm like, how have I waited weeks to tell him that? But we're finally in this moment where I'm decompressed. We're one-on-one. My phone's off. My guard's down. We've had a good time. And those 2 things, if I've had to see anything help protect family life, bring it forward, or even salvage it, is those two things: a sincere apology and a genuine compliment. So that's, you put those fun activities and that focused reflection together, it really does tie the bow.
Yep. And this is something that you do quarterly, or you advocate to do quarterly. Like
Yes, sir.
that's the cadence, right? So
Yeah.
it's doing that every single quarter with every single child, right?
Yeah.
And
Every kid, a half a day, one-on-one, without electronics, fun activity with focused reflection. That's it. That's the whole book right there. Now, there's
Yep.
great examples and things that can help you with a little bit of the parts. But that is the whole framework. That's why this thing has taken off. It's easy to understand, easy to put to use. You see real results and you'll want to keep doing them.
Yep.
That's it.
One thing that I noticed you talked about is, you've got the quarterly cadence with your children, but you do a weekly date night with your wife.
Yes. So, I mean, so I'll go into a big room of entrepreneurs, successful people. I mean, real movers and shakers. And I'll say to them, hey, can you name the time? Because we're talking about rhythms. Can you name the day and time you meet with your CFO? Oh yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Can you name when you do your sales meeting? Yes. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. What's the day and time every week you have a date with your spouse? Less than 10% of the hands go up in the room. And I'm like, gosh, this is your most important investor, team member, client, whatever you want to call it through business terms, your spouse. And what I found is, you keep that rhythm. This can be one of the easiest ways to strengthen a marriage, without the excuse. And again, what I do, Joel, because I mess things up. I mean, the secret of why my book is so short, well, I'm an ADD entrepreneur. I had to write something that I knew that I would read, right? Well, I mess things up because I'm not great at details. I'm better on the creativity, the relationships. So what did we do? Date night, I can't mix it up. It's every Wednesday, 5:30 to 8:30. Every Wednesday, 5:30 to 8:30. It's easy to get the babysitter. She knows it's Wednesday, 5:30 to 8:30. It's not interrupting with busier activities on the weekend. It's hump day. And just setting that one thing, Joel, has been a game changer, absolute game changer. And I do that every week because when me and my wife are strong, it's a trickle down, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. I've heard other people mention that too, of, you love your kids to death, and it's, I don't know how to say it without saying it incorrectly, but obviously your kids are very, very important, but your spouse is like, that's your ride or die. Like that's everything, and so it's funny that not funny, but it was just
I
curious.
get it. It's ironic. Yeah.
It was ironic and just curious to me when I heard you say it. I do weekly meetings, board meetings, weekly date nights with my spouse, my wife, and quarterly with my children. And so I just want to get your input on that. I would love to do weekly date nights with my wife. I've tried to, not that I've tried to advocate for it, but I don't set a cadence for it. Like, hey, we need to go on a date night. It's like, okay, well, 3 weeks later, we still haven't even planned it. It's like, oh, we're so busy, and we put ourselves to the side, and it's really, really important. I mean, like, we're the rock of the family. Like we drive everything. We have to be on the same page. It's
and those 3 hours. I mean, no one's, and I can joke about that. No one's throwing up on you. There's no teen grumpiness storming around you, or what's that smell? What did the dog just eat? Like you're out of the house, and it's just such a nice time. And I'll give you, there's something, we actually teach a class called Date Night. We've been doing this for entrepreneurs where we bring them in and we say how we're all about simple rhythms, as you know. The date night, I think, is just as important as the family board meeting, doing that with your kids. But our thing is same bat time, same bat channel. The intermittent tech fasting goes with it because God, did I mess that up in the beginning, Joel, trying to bring my phone on the date. But what we found is we call it, actually, our class is called Date Night with a Question. Because we would, once we got through setting the date, getting my phone off, you get there and it's, well, how was the kid's day at school? What errands do we have to run on Saturday? How was the weather today? It's like, ooh, the romance is just bubbling, right? It's, and so what we did is we started to look up questions for what do you ask, how to deepen a relationship, love questions to ask your spouse. And we just started to compile these or create our own. And we made a deck of cards. And then so we go out and we'd ask one question, maybe two on each date. But they're questions that get you below the surface. It's not how the weather, it's name the moment you remember falling in love with me. What are the top 3 vacations we ever took in our lives and why? What was so great about them? Who was your favorite teacher that had the most impact on you as a child, and what did they do for you? These are like questions that, or it could be deeper, like name a time that you felt I didn't show up for you, and what could I have done differently? So these are the things that bring us below the surface. Better questions, better life. I mean, so I forget which mentor said that. So we actually go prepared with one or two questions that keep us dating, that keep us romancing, that keep us getting to know each other. And it's, man, we can be having a hard week, but like last night, it's Thursday when we're filming this, it was hump day. We had a phenomenal date. So I come into the second half of the week like, let's go, baby. Like we got this, I'm in line at home. Let's do this. So it cannot be, I can't overstate it enough that a simple weekly date night, get your spouse on board, do it. It's so worth it.
And it makes so much sense too, because like you talk about like a 1 week gap. You know how much can happen in 1 week that can just knock you off your, knock you off your rhythm and get you going from one mood to the next mood. It's good to reset. It's good to have that cadence to help you reset and ground yourself. I'm like, hey, life is okay. No matter what we're going through, we'll get through it together. Like we're in this together. It's all about doing it together. That means it just makes so much sense in it, and hopefully people recognize it and they start to adopt it, because it's simple yet powerful. Do you guys ask the same question? So like, are you prepared with the same question and you go back and forth, or?
We do. We share the same question.
Okay,
and again,
cool.
Another entrepreneurial warning. Okay. Back to the kids' board meetings. These things, when you spend these days with your son, I'm sure you did this with Dominic, this is not a chance for you to plan your next 50 lectures of all the ways they need to improve their life, clean their room. It's not what it's about. Keep the lectures totally off this day. It's not what this day is about. Secondly, for the questions, I want to make sure we're both answering them together. Mm-hmm. So, and when we answer them, this is not a race. The entrepreneurial, spirit in us goes, I'm going to ask them 15 questions, no, like savor it a little bit, like really chew on the question. So 1 or 2 questions. And we like to do the same questions. Like the one that I just said, that's one of my favorite of all time. Well, who was your favorite teacher as a child, and why were they so impactful for you? The two in our life, mine and my wife's teacher, had profound effects in our life. And we learn. And I basically said, how can I be more like Mrs. K? How can she be more like Mr. Malanga? Like, I know the names. It's, so we ask the same questions though.
Yeah. That's awesome. So out of curiosity, when you had one of these board meetings, like when was the first indication that like this was working, this was making a big impact? Like, do you remember that time where like maybe you're in the middle of a board meeting or at the end of a board meeting, or maybe you're reflecting, you're like, wow, this is powerful and this is clearly working?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and the answer is absolutely. So I talk about my family story in there. We're a blended family. When my wife was married straight out of college to a high school boyfriend, ended up being a very bad situation, alcohol abuse. She stood up for herself, got out, and got full custody of their 2 sons. I met her a short time later, a few years later, and adopted them at 7 and 5. And we got along famously right away, Joel, but the boys had trust issues for rightful reasons, the thing they went through. And it was especially hard on my oldest. When I first met him, he was a terrible student, close to failing. He was put on the spectrum, and I can't stand that word, at school, for autism. And he suffered every night from night terrors. And if you don't know what those are, they're terrible. So your child wakes up in a half-conscious state, screaming, terrified. It can take hours to get him back to sleep. We started to have these now what they're known as family board meetings. We called them gym days at the time. They didn't even call me dad at this time. I hadn't adopted them, and adopted them short time later. They asked me to. But we started to have these gym days, which is the exact principles I ended up sharing here. And man, the breakthroughs we had, and the conversations and those genuine compliments where I'm like, hey, you know what? I know you went through some tough stuff, but I want to let you know that it'll never happen again, ever. Like, it's done. It's never going to happen again. I'll always be here now. You never have anything to worry about. And the relaxation, if you've ever dealt with something like this, that I created, and my son tells me now, he's 19, he can express that 7-year-old boy to me now, was so important to him. And I could see in these little conversations, this focused reflection, moving through that first year, how he started to ground and feel comfort. Well, and I talk about this in the book, but within a year, Joel, he went from almost failing to, he got this award at the end, the most improved student of the third grade. He was beaming. They retracted the diagnosis of autism, and within a year, his night terrors were completely gone. So you want to talk about results. Those are the biggest ones. And I would have given up my entire real estate portfolio for that, but I didn't have to. And I don't think other people do to have to make major breakthroughs. And that's why I wrote the book. Really, what I just when those changes started to happen, I started to gently share, hey, I've started spending these one-on-one days with my kids, my new adopted sons, and they've gone through tough things. And all of a sudden, within a year, I had these things. That's where people were like, you need to write a book on this. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not comfortable talking about this. I don't want to do it now. No, this is emotional enough. So anyway, but those are the results I got in the first year. So that's why I believe in this so much.
So was that just a result of all the stress and the trauma that he had gone through with his father, and it was getting released?
Yeah, it was just getting released. It is very important for a child to feel safe and appreciated.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, it's the fuel. It's the fuel or the air out of the tires, really. And he was able to feel both right away. And he has said that once I came on the scene, even it's his whole psyche started to change, which I'm totally honored about. And he's thanked me several times now. And I said, are you kidding me? It's the best thing I've ever done. That's what real men do. That's, we provide and we protect and we love. I did that. You're my son now. You asked me to adopt you. I'm all in. So there's an honor there for sure. But it was stress related. And that's where I think there's another important caveat here. We got these results, Joel, without medication or therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, look, and both can be important in certain times. I totally get that. But that's not what my son needed. He needed a male figure. He needed to feel safe and appreciated. So I don't think he was going to get that from a pill or from a counselor. He got it from where he needed to get it from, and he's worked through those things, and he is a stronger, better man. Sometimes you can grow your biggest strength out of your biggest wound. And I've seen my son do that. So I'm proud as punch of that. And it's been really empowering to hear other family stories of things they've overcome. The power of quality one-on-one time. Yeah. I don't know how to quite measure it. I don't know the science behind it, but I've seen some incredible results.
I'm curious. I'm not anti-medicine or anti-pills either, but I'm curious if, because of the fact that you are so present and you saw your son and you saw what he was going through, I'm wondering if parental instincts are so powerful. Probably, I don't want to speak for you, but this is just my analysis. I'm wondering if you saw how he was acting, he doesn't need medicine. There's something else that, there's nothing, that's the parental instinct that kicks in. And that's also part of being present and being aware of really seeing your son or your daughter, really knowing their personality, really seeing symptoms and saying, okay, is there something deeper here? Or is there a way to help resolve this or help, maybe they're under stress. And I think it's so, again, going back to being present and just being aware and understanding how your son or daughter operates. And
exactly. And it all made sense to me when, if a medical professional, again, I'm not shooting that down, time and a place or a pill. It all made sense to me. I mean, not doing well in school, signs of autism they weren't autism. It was stress related. And then night terrors. It's it was pretty easy for me to figure out. It was pretty easy for my wife, you know what I mean? But when families have been through a hard time, and we've really started to open up, my wife is actually writing a book just incredible story of what she overcame. It's not easy to talk about though. And even with a doctor or someone like that, that's the problem, where it's these kind of underlying things where you really need human connection, because you're not going to go to a doctor and say, oh, well, he's showing signs of autism, let's put him on this, or he's night terrors, maybe just needs to go on this thing. We don't get to the root issue. And it's not easy to talk about these things. Remember, it wasn't like our opening conversations on our first date nights with my wife. She had to open up and say, it took some time to say, I went through a really tough thing, and it's just not a first conversation type thing. So you can imagine for a child, it was even harder. So you have to step in. And if I hadn't been taking this time, this observation, how would it have happened? You know what I mean? If I didn't set aside the quality time, I would have stayed surface. I think it wouldn't have been these moments of real vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, Jim, we're wrapping up on our time. This has been a fantastic conversation. I was really looking forward to this. It was a really deep conversation. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The book that you wrote that I read is called The Family Board Meeting. I grabbed it on Amazon. Is there anywhere else that people can go check out your information, go follow up with you? Let's drop some links and send some people your way.
You can look us up on 18 Summers Tribe on Instagram. My wife posts for us there all the time. And then we're also on 18summers.com. That just has our website, more things that we're up to, a couple of free downloads. If you're looking for more family rhythms and support, you can go to see us there as well.
Are you still doing retreats, by the way? I meant to ask you that when, because Daniel was talking about one of the retreats that he did with you.
Yeah. Daniel, I think, has been to either 2 or 3 of our retreats. And the answer is we're going to put him back on the calendar. Going into the pandemic, we had like 15 talks, workshops, retreats, like a combo of them all planned, all got canceled. And honestly, Joel, I've been enjoying St. Augustine so much with the family. I haven't put much back on the books, but we are going to. So we'll be updating on the website as that, but we will be doing more retreats because, again, for selfish reasons, a good selfish. My oldest sons now are 17 and 19, and we started doing those retreats over 10 years ago. And they still say the interaction, the lessons, and the camaraderie they got at those was a total game changer for them. So I got to do the same thing for my next round of kids, ranging 7, 5, 6 months, so I want my family to be a part of that with more families like yours and Daniel's. So.
Awesome. So we'll drop those links in the show notes. Jim was great connected, man. Fellow St. Augustine, Volano Beach, right down the road, right up the road, I should say. So it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Jim. And for everyone else, we'll talk soon.